In any proposal, any project, any program I've ever seen, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these projects over the years, this is what they work like, and I'm going to explain that to you. And it might not immediately seem terribly useful, but I'm sure in the longer term it will be. Hopefully it will also be immediately useful. My name then is Dr. I'll put that there because everybody at university does, if they've got one of those, seems to put that up. And it's also kind of useful because my doctorate was in something that is something like the things that you do, I suspect. I did a doctorate in 91 or 2, I can't remember, the same time as Ross, in Derrida. I did a thesis on Derrida with Professor Jeff Bennington. Bennington is, you may know, is a very eminent Derrida scholar. So I kind of have the sense that when I was your age, I was more or less thinking the same things about writing and working and money that you think now. However, most of those behaviours are not terribly useful because money is a cutthroat business. Unfortunately, it casts a shadow over research. Without money, you won't get anywhere in European research. And I'm talking mostly about European research. There's tons of money available. It brings a lot of kudos with it. It brings your reputation. It develops your reputation very, very quickly. And if you get the right type of money, the right type of program, you get involved in these things, you will find things work very, very much more quickly than you would imagine. You will make progress across. Your European reputation will develop very, very, very quickly. How to get the cash? Okay. Well, first of all, I didn't really know who I was going to be speaking to today. I don't know really how much you know. I know some people have got doctorates, some people are researchers, early phase researchers. So I guess I'm talking really to the people that are in a position to apply for funding, postdoctoral funding. Maybe this applies to people that are thinking about applying for doctoral funding. I don't know, but because I don't really know how that works. When I did my doctorate, I got a major state award from the British Academy. The British Academy, I realise now, doesn't even exist, and the major state award has also disappeared. So I really don't know how this works. I work in a consulting company. When I finished my doctorate, I was offered a job in a consulting company, and I took it. So I've never worked in academia. I've never worked in a place where anybody paid me a reliable salary, except for a short period when I worked in the government in Spain, which is another story. But I worked as a government official in Spain. I did get a salary, so I know what it's like. But I also know mostly what it's like to have to fight for money to get paid. So I've never worked in a place where if I didn't win money, I would have any salary at all. So my instinct for winning money, I think, is fairly refined because it needs to be. And all of the money that I win has been about research, and it's all been highly competitive. It's all been European. So what I'll be speaking about is really the European funds, very, very competitive funding, large amounts of money. The projects that I've been involved in are up to 50 million euros, for example, in very, very complex international networks and consortia, right down to small projects of a few thousand euros, so the whole kind of scope of possible funding. I've seen it hundreds of times. So what I'll try to show you today is how basically these things work. What is available in Europe, I don't really know right at the moment, and I'm not going to try and tell you what you can go for. Basically, because the information is renewed all the time and things change, and I don't know what precisely is open at the moment. But basically, it breaks down into Marie Curies, which are postdoctoral research stays in other universities. After a Marie Curie, they kind of envisage you might take up this thing called the European Research Council starting grant, which is early phase research, where you're the individual PI driving, devising, writing the project for yourself. These are up to around 2 million euros. So I guess it's Marie Curie's and ERC starting grants we're talking about today. But there's also, for the senior people in the room, the obvious thing that you should be doing as a research group is encouraging the seniors to win European projects and tie you in as part of their research group, because by doing that, what you do is you get exposure to how European funding works and how European consortia work, how you behave in these things. It's a very, very particular way of doing research work. So I would say that the younger individuals here could think about Marie Curie's and starting grants, but the leaders of the group can think about how do we get involved in European work, either in the Horizon programme, which is the big funding programme, or outside of the Horizon programme in more policy-related areas, which I've worked in a lot. But anyway, this is how a European project works. This is how a project works. They're all the same. It's broken down into 5 levels, and this thing is called the logical framework, which probably strikes some people as being a horrible consultancy trick, and it is to some extent. But this thing is from the 60s. This was developed in the 60s in Germany and the States. It's a planning methodology, a project planning methodology for large, complex international projects. Originally in the aid sector, because they were spending billions and billions of dollars in aid in the developing world, and nothing was happening, and they didn't know why. So what they devised was a methodology to plan projects that actually could be tracked and could be monitored, and whether they were successful or not could be evaluated. This is a very, very simple, logical way of thinking about projects, and it works in this way. Down at the bottom, we have something about resources, which is effectively the money and the people. Most European projects are slightly artificial in the sense that they're set budgets. Very often there'll be a set budget. It can't be beyond this. So, and most of the time you'll be bidding for the maximum. Most people, most of the time, bid for the maximum amount of money. So in most European contexts, this layer is a bit of a red herring. It doesn't really play much of a role, because they're not going to decide whether you win or lose on how much you're asking for. In some places they are going to be doing that. The next level up, some very poorly written proposals basically are pleas for money. Please give me some money. They're not much more than that. They never win, of course. The next level up, the logical framework, is the activities level. This is where you describe what you're going to be doing. This is where you describe what you're going to be doing. This is the stuff you're going to be doing, the methods you're going to be using, the activities, the visits, the research, the interviews, the etc., etc., etc. And many projects basically are, because I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, so I kind of know. Descriptions of what I'm going to do and how much it's going to cost. That is mostly what people think a project proposal is. What I'm going to do, loads of stuff, I'm going to do loads of stuff, I'm going to write loads of stuff, I might even write a book, I'll write some papers, and it's going to cost this amount of money. So consider this offer, and they never win. You never win, you can't win from that position. That is a fundamentally incomplete proposal. What I'm going to do now is jump up to the top. At the level of the overall, this is the highest level of the logical framework, is the overall objective, commonly known also as the greater why. This is one of the least competitive areas of the proposal, the activities and the overall objective. The overall objective is basically the context setting. The overall objective is the high-level objective that you are trying to reach in the field of your research. So you're basically saying in the high-level objective, okay, I work here, we all work here, all the colleagues that I know work here, we're all trying to solve common problems in the field. The issues in the field are these ones. So the reader, because the reader initially, you must assume, knows more or less nothing about your proposal. If you write a proposal for an expert audience, you will fail because the expert audience doesn't exist. You're writing a proposal for an interested and relatively well-informed layman, effectively. Even in specialist hard science areas, they get read by people that just aren't fit to judge them. So you must, in the first instance, write. It's an inductive process. It's a journalistic process. You write in a very, very open, it's probable this is the case. These things are these are the issues that everybody understands. These are the issues that we are working towards. And I'm going to choose one. I'm going to choose this area, this area. This is the area that I'm going to focus on in this project. So the beginning bit As you know, a journalist writes in an inverted triangle, so that if you want to read the top bit, you can understand pretty much everything. If you're really interested, you read right down to the bottom for the details. Not many people do. So here, what you're doing is saying, I'm a brain cancer person. Everybody knows that brain cancer is terribly important. In brain cancer, there are a number of really critical barriers that we must overcome. I'm choosing this one because I think it's the most important of all. It also happens to be the only one you can focus on because it's the work that you do. So it's a rhetorical as well as a logical exercise. You make the rhetoric and the logic appear completely coherent. You say, this is what we're doing, everybody realises it's important. My research suggests that this is the key lever to pull. So that's the basic offer that you make here at the highest level. I'll work down again to the middle. The next layer up is the intended results. The intended results, and this is where ambitious researchers get to about here. They say, I want some money, I'm going to do some stuff, and I will produce some things. I will produce some things. I will produce a new database, I will produce a new model, I'll write some books, I'll do, but a database is a very popular thing. So this is the stuff that you produce, the deliverables, this is the stuff you do, and this is the resources that you use. It's still an unwinnable position. You never win projects by describing what money you need, what you're going to do, and the results that you produce. Even though that might seem complete, it's not. What they're looking for is this thing. This is what you're selling. Project purpose. How do you spell purpose? Like that, more or less. So, basically, this is the project purpose, which is the objectives of the project. Research, commercial, competitive research is what is called objectives-driven research. It is driven by the endpoints, the objectives, the places where you are going. The places where you are going. And there are always three, unless you've got a very, very large complex process, there are always three. For kind of classical rhetorical reasons, 3 is the number that you use for your objectives. You have 3 objectives. What are the objectives? The objectives are basically the difference that it will make to this thing, which is the field level problem, the difference this will make to that. It's clear statements of endpoints. At the end of the project, for the first time, I will be able to evaluate, control, predict. These are in the hard sciences, you use those. Control and predict are fundamental words in the hard sciences. In the social sciences, I don't see why you can't use the same ideas about control of knowledge, prediction of systems. At the end of the project, for the first time, I will be able to control, predict, evaluate. Not I will know this thing, because it's never strong enough to say I will describe, I will know, because this is just common or garden. Anybody can find stuff out, anybody can know stuff for the first time. It's putting this knowledge to work in some way to solve a field level problem. It is about making a contribution to the overall objective by solving 3 major issues in the field and writing it out in that way. I, at the end of the project, for the first time, will be able to something like control, something like predict, something like evaluate or judge. Then, this is what they're buying. They're buying the effects, the benefits. In development planning, this is called the sustainable benefits to beneficiaries. This is the thing that changes the field that you're working in, that will exist after the end of the project, make a difference after the end of the project. The impact of the project is contained in the ambition and the strength of the promises that you make here. These are promises, these are science fiction, in fact, because you don't know what the future will be like, but these are strong promises. This is why the project proposal is a kind of a weapon. It's like a tool, it's a device. It's a device to get money. It's not a device to show that you're a clever person. They all know you're a clever person. It's a device to extract money from these people. They must spend it. It's going somewhere. There's no reason why it shouldn't come to everybody here. I promise you, everybody here could win if you do something logical and sensible. Most projects are nothing like this. Most proposals are nothing like this. I promise you, most are, I want to do this stuff. It's self-evidently important, it never is, and it's going to cost this amount of money. Some clever people say, okay, and at the end, I'll have this stuff. As if these things were self-evidently important. Winning proposals actually start here. Winning proposals say, okay, what I want to do is change the field in these quantifiable and verifiable and measurable ways. And the closer you can get to that hard science mentality about measurable, verifiable, control, evaluate, predict, the easier it will be for you to win. There's not much place in these, in my experience at least, for scholarship. Scholarship and research are two different things. Scholarship is, beavering away translations, accumulation of knowledge. Projects are things that have effects. They start, they have a middle, they have an end. They're discrete entities, and they're funded in that very structured way, as if the funders are buying the effects. So if you start from the end, it doesn't take so long, and it is much, much better to do, much more effective, much more likely to win, than if you start from the beginning. Most people start writing here, what I'm going to do, because I've always done, I'm going to do more of this, and I want some money to do it. You start from the top, you choose the most attractive possible topic, you choose the most attractive possible and feasible endpoints within that topic, and you write the results and activities that will lead you to that endpoint. It's an entirely, not mechanical, but it's an entirely, it's a pragmatic, and it's a very focused, and it's a very, it's not normal academic work. You can suspend your academic modesty and your academic principles if you're interested in winning the money. It's unfortunately the case that to write in an academic way, it's very tough to win. You write in this very pragmatic and focused, and I can't quite find the word for it, but which isn't a pejorative kind of word, but it's a practical exercise with one thing in mind. There's no point in doing it if you don't win. There's absolutely nothing to be gained from not winning. Even the comments you get back from the evaluators are, in my experience, mostly nonsense. You learn nothing from submitting and reading what they think. It's either insulting or it's just bizarre. So you do it to win. And I've seen people win from the most unlikely positions. It doesn't matter which institution you're in. It doesn't matter what your profile is like. It doesn't matter if you're a Nobel Prize winner. You must write this kind of structured proposal. This is behind European funding, and I'm speaking, as I said, mostly about Europe. This is behind European funding. I know it is. Logical framework is behind the European funding because I've worked with the European program managers on planning program implementation using logical framework in Luxembourg. So this is behind their thinking, and if you use it, structure your thinking in this way, you will have much more effective proposals, and you will win more money. That's, I think, about it. Have I used up enough time?
Yes, thank you. We have a 15 minutes Q&A.
Ross?
That logical framework theme, is that structured into the forms that they fill out, or is that something that they would expect you to know and fill out the form?
Neither. It's something that enables you to look at what the funders are asking for and see what bits go where and how to write which bits. This is a small part of a very, very long training course that I give, which lasts 6 hours sometimes, that I give around Europe. This is just one part of it. And I'm just thinking, actually, when I was sitting there, what one thing could I say that might make a bit of a difference? This won't be anywhere except in some aid projects. When you're writing aid, in the UK, the development agencies, they ask you to fill this in. The other stuff have just given these different titles. So they're recognisably there. The European funding is recognisably there, and it's easy to use this to fill in the forms that you're asked to fill in and create the arguments that you're asked to argue. You won't ever see this. But if you look at what these things are, the concepts these things represent, then they are in there, and they're very evidently in there as well. So it's just a question of, every program is a bit different. As I said when I was answering a question, there's a kind of a spirit and a letter of the law. Each one has a different set of objectives and each one has a different set of rules. You must understand what objectives, what rules are at play, and then you will find inside that something looking very, very close to that. What I normally do in the training thing is get someone out, and in real time we develop a project for them to see how it's tricky to make this transition from doing stuff and making stuff to talking about what difference having that stuff makes. This is the what and how questions that everyone's very comfortable with. So if you ask a scientist, what do you do and how do you do it, they'll just talk forever. If you ask them why they do that, mostly they're lost. So, why do you do the stuff that you do? But the funders are looking for answers to big, apparently intractable questions in the field. Those are the why issues that they're asking. Why is this important? Why should we fund this thing? So if you answer that question very, very obviously, you're very, very quickly rising to the top of the pile. If you answer the question of why should we fund this thing at this time, what issues is it solving? And the objective statements also contain a clear statement of what the problem solved will look like, what the world will be like when you've done this work, which gives them a very clear idea of, why is that important? Because the thing is going to look different, the world will be different. And the world is framed in each, the rhetoric of each discourse, each discipline, it's framed very, very differently. In the sciences it looks different. But the structure, the job of limiting what you're going to say and putting a framework around your particular universe is the same, whether you're in sciences, in literature, or in quantum physics. It's exactly the same job. Logically the same job.
Do you work for the university? Where do you give this training? Do you give training to universities?
I do a lot of training across European universities, yes.
Okay.
Where did I do this training? I did this training longer ago than I can remember, in Holland. They like it in Holland.
So you're a freelancer?
No, I work for a company. I'm a director of a consulting company, freelancer effectively, yeah, for hire, yeah.
Mm.
I don't work in an institution, no.
Mm-hmm. And are you applying, do you apply for this currently?
I do two things. Basically, I advise people on when they're writing proposals, exactly what to write.
Mm-hmm.
And I write proposals for my own company for the research areas that we have expertise in, which are things that you wouldn't be interested in if I mentioned, but they're basically European issues around policy. It's policy research.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically policy research, which is where I started off working when I went from academia into consulting. I worked in a policy consulting company for the European Commission. And learning proposals was part of the job. The bit about proposals was because people kept asking me to write a proposal for them. So in the end I thought, oh, okay, I might as well get paid for it, so it's now part of the business, yeah.
Okay.
And this is part of that.
I was just wondering if universities can hire you.
They can, but yeah, talk to me if you like, but I'm really not interested in suggesting that I am for hire, no, because that's not, I agree with Ross, I'd do him a favour to come and, but yes, in principle, yes, it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You wouldn't like the price, so I don't suppose you...
Oh, I wouldn't pay you myself, so, you know.
So this is not, I'm trying to keep far away from it being a sales pitch. This is why, when I listened to what people were saying today, if I'd known about structuring arguments in this more logical way when I was younger, I don't know if it would have made any difference when I finished my doctorate. I think Bennington would have murdered me if I'd done anything like this, because I was sitting around, I can remember sitting around in bars with him, and the idea of actually earning money and getting a job and even ending your PhD was kind of a real, it's much too kind of pragmatic and not academic enough. The idea that you might. I remember saying to him, I'm looking forward to finishing it, looking forward to having a doctorate. And I remember him saying in a big group, Matthew, I think you'll find that nobody in this group is interested in the qualification. It was the purity of the Derridean enterprise. But so from that, that's no good. This is what you need to get towards. This is what you need. This is what everybody in Europe is training in. this is how they write. It's not an accident that the money goes to the same people consistently. The money goes to the same places. It's not because the science is any better, because in Europe the science is good everywhere. Everywhere's got good science. Not many places have got good proposals. It's the proposals that make the difference. The professionalism of the proposal, the clarity, in fact, not even that, it's the clarity of the objective that you're trying to sell. That is the sale. This is the sales pitch. I am going to change this stuff in this way. At the end of my work, this will be different. This is important because I proved it here. This is practical and feasible because I'm going to do this stuff and end up with these results. But the sales pitch is basically that. This is important because this needs to be changed, and I'm going to do it. Yeah.
So when you get the money based on those measurable objectives, how closely do they follow that?
It depends which programme it is. If, for example, in the ERC, the European Research Council, which is academics, run by academics for academics, not closely at all. You can do whatever you like. I mean, you could do anything. So this is why you need to take a ruthless attitude about writing, because once you've got the money, they leave you alone in that area. There are other places where, in the Horizon 2020 in general, depending on the project officer, every project gets allocated a European project officer, and some of them are really lazy, and you can do anything you like. Some of them are really enthusiastic, the worst kind. They're really enthusiastic, and they kind of visit you and say, well, you said, by month 6 you would have made this thing, and it's not, I can't see it, where is it? You think, okay, bad luck, I'll have to do some work. But somewhere in between, micromanagement and absolutely nothing normally, yeah. I mean, if you've got a good reason for not reaching objectives, they don't, the thing is, they're going to spend the money. They've got all this money. In government, if you don't spend the money, you don't get it next year. So the first thing about government is if you've got any money, you must spend it. That is the only thing they're really interested in, is getting rid of the money. They're going to spend the cash. They don't want it back. That's a disaster. They never want it back. If you give them a reason to take it back, they really hate you for it. You never get any money again. So give them every reason to get it and no reason to ask for it back, and you'll spend many happy years in European projects, I promise you. It's easy to get into. In fact, it's easy to get into if you do it the right way. It's almost impossible to get into if you go about it the wrong way. It's strangely difficult to get out of once you're in it, because if you're a good researcher, they want you in the networks. They need you because there are so many duffers. They need people that are good and reliable. So this is what I said about earlier. The leaders of the group here should be thinking, okay, in some way we need to break into European funding and tow the rest of the youngsters in behind us, because if you join a big network or a big collaborative interdisciplinary project in Europe, there's plenty of cash. You tie in 15 or 20 other researchers who do the work, and they get to know people right across Europe, from academics, from businesses, from government, because these are always multi-level, complex projects. To the extent where now, pretty much, if I needed to find anyone in any academic subject in any university, in any country in Europe, I could probably do it in a couple of phone calls. If I needed to find someone who did Greek poetry, I could speak to a guy that I worked with 10 years ago, who knows a guy who knows a guy. It's a great big club. You must get into it because that's where all the money is. It's not difficult to get in if you do something like this. It's very, very, very difficult to get into it if you do it blind, like stumbling around, trying and failing. It's something you can do reliably. I mean, I've done it reliably because I'm still in business after many years, so it's kind of reliable. A bit lumpy, I admit, it is a bit lumpy, but it's reliable fundamentally, yes.
Further question from Laura?
So about reliability, how will Brexit affect our...
I don't know. I assume, as always, things will just more or less carry on as they are. The UK is in a luxurious position because the best research in Europe in most areas is done in the UK. So if they take their ball and run off in a half, they will probably suffer. The Europeans will suffer far more than the British will do, I think. So I don't know. I would act as though it's not going to change, and I would act quick because it might change. If it applies to you, it may not apply. I mean, I may be talking something that nobody is even eligible to apply for. But if you are eligible, for example, the Marie Curie's or the European Research Council starting grants, if you're eligible for a European starting grant and it's coming up, I think the next call will be in January or something of next year, you really should have a go. You really should have a go. If someone here was able to win a European Research Council starting grant, you would see your career accelerate in a way that it would take you years to do in any other way, because you're drawn into this European network very, very quickly. And the people in the European Union, the European Research Council programs are the leading researchers in Europe, and there are some clever people involved, really. And to go to meetings, to be in the network with people of that calibre really is very much worth doing. And the money is great too. It's a lot of cash. And it's easy to get. I promise you, it's deceptively easy to get. The mythology that surrounds European money is very, very unhelpful. But it's, you know, it's for the Northerners say it's for the Southerners. The Southerners say it's for the Northerners. Everyone says it's only for people from this place or that place. Oh, I'm too busy. I don't understand it. It's not for me. All these kind of displacement activities that take longer than doing it, in fact. To explain to yourself why you won't do it, it takes far longer than sitting down and doing it properly. So if you sit together as a group, I think it's some kind of coherence to the group, as I understand it, a research group, sit together with a group and make a structured plan to identify the people that are eligible for the different funding lines. Is this are you potentially a Marie Curie candidate? Are you potentially an ERC candidate? Could we look to see what calls have come up in the wider Horizon 2020? And could we as a group, aim to contact people in France, in Germany, in Greece, build a network and make a proposal that is irresistible. You must make these irresistible proposals that correspond exactly to what they're asking for. Not vaguely, and not dependent upon what you would like the world to be like or your work is like. It's totally irrelevant. What you've got to do is line by line open these calls up, because somebody's written these calls. I've been involved in writing these calls, so I know how they're done. Someone sits down, and I've been in a room where I kind of sit there moaning on about something or other that I kind of know about. The European officers write it down, and the next day it comes out as an official commission document against which money will be spent. So, I mean, if I wanted to aim for that thing, it's probably only I know what that's about, because it's just like a random series of thoughts. So you have to pick this apart, set it out, and hit every mark, absolutely everything, the spirit and the letter of the law. You will then get very close, because nobody else bothers to do that, and that's what you need to do. Everything they're asking for, you need to set in the way they're asking you to do it. So with a big group like this, I could see absolutely no reason why within a year or two you couldn't have a thriving European line and a reliable line of European money stretching into the future. There's no earthly reason why you shouldn't be capable of doing that. There's absolutely no, if you want to do it. If you don't, then it doesn't make any difference, but if you do want to do it, there's no impediment other than pure stupidity on most people's parts, and laziness, of course, which is the other big problem that academics tend to suffer from, is laziness and indifference. But you can't allow those things to get in the way. You'll find lots of commission officials much prefer to work with consultants than academics, because they find academics to be lazy and slow. And the consultant is always quicker, and generally more accurate. So all you need to do is up your game, become tighter, sharper, quicker, better networked, more logical in the presentation of the ideas, and you will, if you set your minds to it, you will win something. I promise you, within 6 months, I would think it almost impossible not to win something of significance. That's the thing. It means something. You know, you go to all these fantastic European meetings in Estonia and places like that. Soon becomes a little bit tedious, but nonetheless, sorry, 1 minute. I'll stop now. I'll stop immediately. 1 minute. I don't need a minute or. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
No
Matt.
problem.